This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. For a bit of context, I think probably I've had a pretty long streak of recording every single day. I think since about 2019, every single day I'd be recording a piece of guitar music, and almost all of it has been done with an HX Stomp or a Helix or a fractal audio device, and then occasionally I would use an amplifier. But I don't know if you might have seen kind of the kind of revelation that happened around the idea of using your audio interface with plugins and setting that input gain to 0 as your baseline. That's not the whole story, but it's a simple part of it. I've actually not picked up an HX Stomp or a Helix until today. Now, it doesn't mean that I've not been using the Line 6 stuff, because I've actually been using Helix Native, which has kind of superseded the hardware now for me, basically, in terms of workflow. Going back, a demo of the Helix Native was about the first and one of the few pieces of paid work that I've actually done for Yamaha/Line 6 in the UK. They were running a promo on it. I can't remember, a few years ago, 2020, 2021, around then. Up until that point, they sent me an HX Stomp in about 2018, I think. and then I bought a full Line 6 Helix from them later on, because the guy that I used to speak to said I'd be interested to see what you could do with a full Helix. And I've been, very keen on the Line 6 stuff since that time. And then the Helix Native demo came, and I kind of experimented with it. And Helix Native has actually been part of my production workflow for a while, because I actually run like a bus which has Helix Native on it for some kind of sparkly effects and bits and pieces that I maybe sometimes put guitars through, or other instruments and stuff like that. But up until, this revelation, the native thing was a little bit of a... I didn't know exactly what I should be doing to gain stage in front of it. I didn't know whether I was getting exactly the same sounds as I get with the hardware if I plug into my interface. I was maybe thinking, this seems noisier, and that sort of stuff. So, that's been the process. Now, these days, because I have limited time, I was actually responding to someone who asked if I kind of do Zoom Skype lessons this morning. At the moment, basically, between about 9 and 12 in the morning is basically when I get time to do a bit of work, and then just when LOD's gone to bed, so between about 7 and 8, 7 and 9. That's sort of the timings for me, mostly, that I get to do a little bit of work, mostly. And obviously those are kind of flexible. So I feel like there is maybe a tiny window, if you are interested in like a Skype lesson, that in the future I may be able to give one. The answer up until this point has been mostly I just don't have time. But anyway, so my process has been jump over to the computer, just plug in any guitar, set a click track going, and I've actually got on a template, if I right click and add track from template, I can add shred guitar, which pulls up Helix Native with my Eric Lee 2023 preset, which is what I was using in the intro there. You can grab it on Gumroad if you want. And then snapshot 3 of that is my kind of go-to clean tone, and snapshot 1 is my sort of lead tone, then snapshot 2 is my lead tone, but a bit more. And now that I've, with the help of Ed S, if you haven't checked out those videos, figured out that an audio interface with single coils, even still setting that gain interface down lower, will generally work best. I'm actually finding the workflow with plugins much better. If I want to jump out of the Line 6 ecosystem, I can. If I find that whatever's happening in the track seems to warrant less delay, less reverb, which oftentimes it will, I can then edit that. If I think I could just use a different tone altogether, I could pull up a Neural DSP plugin and check that out, see what it sounds like with it, or an S-Gear or anything else like that. So I'm finding actually once you get away from the hardware world, it actually opens up things in quite an interesting way. And I do think, for instance, I've got a video coming up on this about why people maybe get on with Neural DSP plugins so well. The actual workflow of working with a plugin can, in many cases, I think, be quite superior to working on the hardware itself. I don't know if you're a Helix native boy or girl, or if you use any other plugins. Let me know in the comments if you've made this leap. But for me, the hardware now, more or less, is only going to be used live in the studio, my bedroom. I'm going to be mostly using native going forward, I think. And I didn't expect this to be the case, especially when I was first sort of asked to do a demo of it all those years ago. But now, in 2024, I am actually starting to come around to the idea that plugins, probably, for me, are going to be increasingly interesting when, things like changes to hardware can come at any time. A new unit could come along and render that piece of gear that you spent £1,249 on last month suddenly worth quite a bit less. I think the plugins, less investment, less cost. Actually, a point that I should make, though, a couple of things that I have been missing about this is that ability to change on the fly whilst you're recording. So sometimes I might want to jump from a lightly gained tone over to a heavier tone, or for instance, I just sat down and started programming something that you're going to see in a future video, where I'm switching things for musical reasons. I'll show you quickly, actually. I say musical, but for effect reasons. So there is some inspirational element there that I can kind of only get with some sort of physical controller, or I could go in and program it in later and probably have a bit more control over it in native and with parameters. But that is one element, and if I had like an on the floor looper as well, where the hardware for me still has some real benefits. So, but as I say, it's probably been a month, maybe more, that I've not used this. So here you can see my digital workstation here. This is my basic workflow. This is what I would normally set up. Where would I right click? Insert new track from template, shred guitar. This pulls up basically this type of track here. I'm sat near to the computer now with a single coil guitar, but it would normally pull it up. Eric Lee 2023. And it pulls it up on scene 1. And what's cool about that is that I can then jump in and make the changes that I need to. So my stock settings that I like to record with may have more delay, more reverb. And this is a typical thing that I would do in the studio as well when I went in. I'd say, can we put some delay on the track for me when I'm hearing it, rather than printing it to tape with the delay. I'm using a delay for my own kind of artistic or habit reasons. It doesn't actually have to be on the track permanently, and so that's what's cool about Helix Native. Like, I can come in here and then bring that down or take it off altogether, or I could sync it up with the track if I wanted to, get rid of the reverb if I decide that's no longer appropriate, or just change the sound altogether. My clean tone is one that I really, really like. I say clean, it's kind of like edge of breakup. And yeah, completely quiet when I sit. Well, I say completely quiet. This room in general has a bit of some sort of ground issue. But so if you want to see what this preset looks like, jump up into the Gumroad folder, Eric Lee 2023. I've definitely done a video on it recently as well. It's kind of my #1 Helix preset that I use at the moment, I think was what I called the video. So jump in here. If I've got gain on, I would kick on the input gate. Then our first pedal is basically a red squeeze, which is actually boosting our line level quite a bit as well. If I was plugging in with a more meaty guitar, that might be a block that I would take in or out. And yeah, mix 83%, sensitivity 3.8, level plus 12. Then we're going into the Line 6 litigator, the kind of Dumble-ish one, 2.2 drive, so we're getting quite a lot of that gain from kind of just boosting signal level in. Bass at 6.2, mids at 6, treble at 6.8, presence at 3.4, channel volume at 9.7. You will be getting a little bit of hum here from that hum control. So if you want totally cleanness, it's probably good practice to actually turn that hum down. Then EQ, a low high shelf, kind of kicking us in the 149 Hz region, just a bit for a feel kind of aspect more than anything else. Into the 4x12 Cali V30, which I use for pretty much most things these days. 67 condenser, position 3.9, and the high cut at 4 kHz, which I will open up. Again, this is another great thing about the Helix Native thing, is that I can make tonal choices after the fact, which I think is actually way superior if you're actually, you know, working on this stuff and not considering that this has to be the finished product. Because I sometimes will open up that high cut to maybe 6 kHz, depending on the track, depending on what else is happening, and that's kind of a ideal for me. Then the delay and the reverb, as I've already shown you. So that's how I'm using the Helix Native generally. Another thing I do is, let me just, I have like this, all this prod. So what this does is I have like a pitch block going up an octave or something like that, and then it goes into a plex, a dynamic plate, and a shimmer, and an ADT to move things out of the stereo or out to the side of the stereo field. So that's a thing I use as like a production technique with Helix Native, which is part of my workflow in most projects as well. So yeah, Helix Native for me has been actually my go-to now for quite a while. If you want it to compete with Neural DSP stuff in terms of level, you'll find that Neural DSP stuff is generally a bit louder, and that's possibly why, perception-wise, you might find that you think that the Helix stuff sounds a bit weedy in comparison. But yeah, if you kind of up the level on this, or bring down the level on the Neural DSP stuff, because I think it's actually a little bit loud in general as a starting point. But that's how I've been using Helix Native. That's why the hardware has been collecting dust, frankly, for a little while now. I hope that was, acceptable to talk about. This JCB Assman preset, I think you'll really dig if you're into stuff like me, and Eric Lead 2023. But I've got loads and loads and loads of presets that you might want to check out in the Gumroad folder. I'll catch you in another video soon. Cheers.